Hey everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun scroll saw project video, I have a beautiful mythological design by Steve Good. It's one of his newer designs, so please keep that in mind. I've already got the pattern printed out to its full size, prepped, and attached to our material with clear packing tape. And for all of the scroll work on today's video, it's going to be 1/4 inch material. As you can see, everything is here in my hand. And as I said, it's a mythological and medieval design. I really love studying that stuff, myths, folklores, urban legends, things like that. Kings, queens, knights of the round table, castles. I love studying that stuff and watching documentaries about them. And this project here really encapsulates all of that. As you see here, really beautiful design that Steve Good offers. It has the medieval knight on horseback with his sword drawn, riding off to the castle in the background, all encapsulated in a dragon design here. So really neat. And since I like this design part so much, we're going to go on and stack cut and make 2 of those out of 1/4 inch material. And then we have the backer board here that's going to have a nice reveal around it once everything is glued together. And you can see it has a tab there, so we're going to have to put a slot into the base that we're going to make out of a scrap piece of 3/4 inch pine that I got out of the scrap bin. But once the backer board is cut out, I can draw out to where that slot needs to be over on the base and cut that out. But I'm really excited to be once again making sawdust here in 2025. This is the very first scroll saw project video of 2025, and I just felt it would be a nice and beautiful design to kick off the year with. If you guys missed the shop tour in last week's video, once again I want to thank you guys for bearing with me as I took Christmas and New Year's off to spend that special and magical time of year with family, friends, and loved ones. But again, I'm excited to be back making sawdust out here in the workshop and creative content. And since all that's left to do to get started in today's project is to move the camera and drill all of the pilot holes for internal cutting, let's do that now. And over here on the workbench, I'm taking the Seiko scroller's drill and drilling out all of the pilot holes for internal cutting. And you will note that I have a backer board behind the scroll saw work to prevent blowout of the pilot holes on the reverse side. But after they are all drilled, we will head over to the Rikon scroll saw and begin scrolling. I'll begin with some of the smaller internal cuts before proceeding to some of the larger internal cuts. And for all of the scrolling on this project, I'll be using a number 5 Ultra reverse tooth blade, and it will cut through all of the material in today's project exceptionally well with minimal chip out. If you guys would like to try this pattern, it's available as a free pattern download over at Steve Good's scrollsawworkshop.blogspot.com website over in his free pattern catalog. Once again, just knocking out some of the smaller cuts here, and we will soon be switching to a closer view to where you guys can hopefully get a better view of the scrolling process. And this project has some veining work in it, and veining over on the scroll saw is just simply creating beautiful and visual lines of detail by just taking the scroll saw blade into a basic line and then backing it back out while the scroll saw is running, as you see me doing here, creating the pathway up to the castle. But veining adds beautiful details to a lot of scroll saw woodworking projects and takes them to that next level. Of course, I am taking my time and letting the blade do the work, and I'm being as loyal as I possibly can be to that cut line. But we will soon get to the final internal cut here, and I'll go around the perimeter of the castle and come back around and go around the horse's head. And once I release the waste wood from the internal cut, I will have to come back and do some more veining work, again adding those lines of detail. But after I get done, all of the internal cutting will be done, and we can retension the blade and do the final long outside perimeter cut to release the piece from the waste wood. And there are some very fragile pieces in the dragon's hand here and in his mouth, so again I'm taking my time with the blade and letting it do the work, just being as careful as I possibly can be. And you guys know I love dragons, I love mythology, I love castles, I love studying about kings and queens in history, It's just a fascinating subject to me that I find appealing to just watch documentaries on and everything. As a matter of fact, a longtime subscriber to the channel sent me a book or several books on castles, and I really appreciated them, and they're in my book collection now, packed with a lot of informative information. But we are done with the bulk of the scroll saw work here, and we can do the backer board here, which is one piece of 1/4 inch material. Remember, we were stack cutting the dragons. And this piece has the tab that will go into the base that we will make momentarily. If you guys like what you're seeing, I'd highly encourage you to subscribe to my channel and follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. Over here on the workbench, we'll remove the pieces from the waste wood and set one of the dragon pieces aside. And I'll take the scrap piece of pine material we are using here. This is 3/4 inch pine, and roughly sketch out a base and go over to the Rikon table saw to cut it out. And I'm just basically eyeballing everything here. Of course, you could make the base any size and shape that you want it to be. But once the base is cut out, we will step back over to the workbench, and I'll take the backer board with the tab in it, and I'll lightly sketch out with a pencil where that slot needs to be, making it as centered as possible. And then I'll quickly drill out that pilot hole and head back over to the scroll saw for the final bit of scroll saw work. And you can see that the scroll saw is on an angle to help reduce neck and shoulder strain. But once the slot is cut out, we get our first visual of the finished project. But before heading over to sanding, we will step over to the router table and put a nice Roman OG profile on just the front and back side of the base. I think that is a nice decorative visual. But then we will head over to sanding with 180 grit Klingspor Woodworking Shop sandpaper in the vibrating palm sander, and I'll carefully sand all the pieces with small circular motions. And then it will be time to head back to the workbench to glue the backer board into the base, and I'll be using medium grade CA glue and activator. And I'll give it around 5 minutes to completely dry and cure. And while it was drying, I got out my Minwax wood stain to stain the backer board and base, and I opted for a very dark stain here to hopefully have a nice visual appeal once the project was done. And we wiped off all of the excess stain with a scrap piece of t-shirt material, and I set it by the wood stove to dry. And once it was dry to touch, I brought the piece back over to the workbench to do the final glue up, gluing the scroll work to the backer board with, again, more medium grade CA glue and activator. And I used a few spring clamps, and even though the glue basically dries instantly, I still like to use the clamps to make sure that the glue grabs on all of the details. But after it again dried around 5 minutes, I removed the clamps and we were ready for a finish. And for a finish, I used several coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss. And once it dried, the project was complete.
And here we have the completed medieval knight on horseback surrounded by dragon design, cut out completely over on the scroll saw from start to finish, and it finished up with some beautiful, nice and crisp details in it. Thank you, Steve Good, for another fantastic design from your pattern catalog. Once again, it's one of his newer designs. If you guys would like to go and try it for yourselves out in your garage or workshops, really, really cool, beautiful details in this mythological style piece here. Really happy with how it turned out. It took me me around 35 minutes over on the scroll saw to scroll everything out completely from start to finish. It's not an overly complex design. It's just with the nature of some of the cuts, and you're going to want to make sure that the scroll work, the backer board, and the base all line up when you're gluing everything together. You need to, of course, take your time and let the blade do the work. And of course, speaking of the base, we did cut it out over on the table saw, then we cut the slot out over on the scroll saw, and then we added a decorative edge over on the router table. And I'm one of the very few that only likes adding the decorative edge to the front and back side of the base as opposed to going around all four sides of it. For me, it's just a nice visual, and it really catches the eye when you pick it up and look at a project like this. But by all means, if you want to, go all the way around to all four sides with a decorative edge if you want to for your project. I'm really happy with all the visuals that this project has here. Of course, you have the dragon as the outline here, but in the center you have the knight on horseback, and it looks like he's riding either to or from the castle here over in the distance. And of course, you have the pathway leading up to the moat to where the knight can escape the fight of the dragon, or he can be riding out to face the dragon. So a lot of visual interpretation in a project like this. And this project has a bunch of veining in it. And veining over on the scroll saw is a great way to take a simple scroll saw project and take it to the next level with lines of details, like all of the lines in the knight's cape, the horse's mane here, and of course the pathway up to the castle itself. So great visual lines of details added in a pattern like this. And because over at the scroll saw I took advantage of stack cutting, we have another project cut out of 1/4-inch material that I can finish in my leisure and downtime behind the camera, or I can pass it along to a fellow woodworking friend and they can finish it if they like dragons and knights and things like that. So really cool. I always like to take advantage of stack cutting whenever possible to make multiples of project and just try out different ways of finishing them. Of course, in this project I finished it in a standard rustic finishing way. I left the main bulk of the scroll saw work the light shade, so everything would shine through once we applied that dark Minwax wood stain to the base and the backer board. That dark color would allow all the light details there to really shine through and hopefully pop in a visually appealing way. But of course, if you didn't want to add stain or a splash of color, you could of course mill down material and make this project out of exotic or hardwoods. And if you wanted to go the extra mile, you could of course go in with acrylic craft paints and paint everything. There's always options and always versatility. And speaking of versatility, you guys know that this one here that we made today takes a base to where it can freestand on a shelf, desk, or countertop. But with this other one here, I'll talk about it for a second. If I wanted to go in and draw out and complete this oval design that's in the center and cut off these two end pieces, I could put this piece on a thicker backer board to where it could be hung and displayed on the wall for a bit of wall decor. So there's always options and always versatility for every scroll saw project and pattern you come across, and I always encourage people to think outside of the box. You guys know, if you are longtime followers and subscribers of the channel, that I love dragons, I love mythology, I love folklore, urban legends, and I love dragons so much, as a matter of fact, that back when I was around 10, 11, 12, going into my early teen years, my mom painted a bunch of ceramic dragons for me, and they were displayed proudly in my room for years and years. This is one that is still on the shelf in my room, and she painted this one in 2002. It's dated, so it's been sitting there a long time. I took it off the shelf and dusted it off, but she makes beautiful handmade ceramic art. All of this is painted freehand by my mom, and what I'll do is leave a link in the description box below to her Instagram page, Turtle Dove Ceramics, where you can go and view and hopefully follow along on her journey. She doesn't post as much on her Instagram as I do, but it's still there for you guys to go and see her beautiful work, and I'm thankful to have all of those pieces still in my possession to where that beautiful handmade art can be displayed and showcased. But really cool. This project here was the kickoff for Scroll Saw Project videos for 2025, and I hope it was a great project to start Scroll Saw Project videos with for the years. And I hope that you guys enjoyed following along on the journey, and hopefully you guys picked up a tip, trick, or tidbit along the way. Thank you all for joining in today. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one, and remember guys, if I can make it or do it, so can you. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, and I'll see you guys real soon.